Birding in Ecuador.
Hey, yeah, I came from Gainesville, Florida about 5 years ago, and I try to get out and bird as much as I can between playing pickleball and doing a bunch of other stuff. And I really enjoyed taking trips abroad, particularly to South and Central America. Doesn't hurt that my wife is fluent in Spanish. So back in February, thanks to Jackie Sulik, who organized the trip with Holbrook Travel, I went with 9 other people and a guide and a driver to Quito, Ecuador. And all of our birding occurred very close to Quito, although it may take several hours to get to these different places. So these were all the different places that we did eBird list for. So we went from Quito northwest up into this area, and then we went to the southeast, and then we had to come back through Quito to get to the Parque Nacional Antisana. On the first day that we arrived, we were picked up at the airport by Tony, our guide, and by Carlos, our driver. When you travel with Holbrook, they get you to and from the airport. They provide all the meals. Holbrook is a travel agency in Gainesville, Florida that I've been on 4 or 5 trips with. I also like to go with Wildside. It's one of Orange Audubon's favorite travel companies as well. And if you go with either of these companies, they're going to take care of you from the get-go, pick you up, feed you. We got all our meals and beer and wine as well. And they carry your luggage and they make sure that every need is met. Any problem, they'll solve it for you. So there's no reason to be scared to sign up for a trip like this. The only thing you have to pay other than your airfare is tips if you want to give a tip. Everything else is taken care of. Admissions to gardens, everything. So we arrived on the 19th and we didn't start birding until the 20th. We were transported around in a bus that would carry 19 people, but there were only 12 of us, including the driver and guide. Ecuador is a very small country. It's only the size of Arizona, and there's only 18 million people there. 3 million of the people live in Quito area. And Quito is in the Andes. When you arrive in Quito, you're already at 9,350 feet elevation. So for the first few days, you got to take it easy. They tell you not to drink alcohol or eat fatty meats and to make sure you drink plenty of water. But we were good from the start. We never had any problem with altitude sickness at all. And the people of Ecuador are very proud of their country. Everywhere you go, you'll see murals like this, or pictures of birds or sculptures of birds, because ecotourism is very important to the economy. Now, one problem that we had is that even though it had been a drought, it seemed to rain a little bit every day, which is not really surprising when you're in a cloud forest or a rainforest, but it really never stopped us from birding. The first day we birded, which was the second day, we started at the Yanacoche Biological Reserve, and then later on in the afternoon, we went to the Alambi Cloud Forest Reserve. These are kind of famous private reserves for bird watching. We were on roads and trails ranging from 7,000 feet to 10,000 feet in elevation. If you're walking on the trail, you needed to make sure that you had a raincoat because it could suddenly cloud up like this, or then it would clear off and then it would cloud up again and you'd be walking in a drizzle. On the third day, we went to the Mashpi Amagusa Reserve, which is in the Choco foothills. And all these reserves are kind of set up the same way. There's usually a building where there's feeders, hummingbird feeders, and also banana feeders to bring the birds in so you can get really good close-up photos. Now, we stayed at a lodge called the Sachatamia Lodge, and it was a beautiful piece of property. I think it's in a reserve that's 3,000 acres. That's Jackie in the center there. Really fun group of people to be with. You can see we're always wearing raincoats, and it was nice and cool out. We never sweated much, I can tell you that. And this lodge just happened to have a very high observation tower. So we got some beautiful pictures looking down into the canopy. One funny thing about this lodge is they made you put on booties before you went into the dining room, because since it rains every day and there's mud everywhere, they didn't want you tracking mud in. And Lee Bloomkamp, who went on the trip with us, is an entomologist, so she was very excited to see rhinoceros beetles. Now, this is something that I never encountered before, but early the next morning, we woke up and we were taken out to the jungle where they had this sheet, and behind the sheet was a light bulb, or in this case, it was in front of the sheet, I guess. And all night long, the moths come and are attracted to the light. And so so we got out there before dawn. Look how many moths are on this sheet. So then you're sitting in the blind and you just wait for the birds to come in. I don't know if you can see, there's a bird right over here in the tree. It's a tree creeper. And it starts slowly, and then it gets to be just masses of birds that fly over to the sheet and pick off the moths one by one and eat them. Now, later on that day, we jumped on the bus and we went out to a place called Sendero Frutti, which is private reserve. Many of these reserves are private and it's family owned. And this particular reserve had the typical hummingbird feeders and the feeders with the plantains, but he also had a plantation of cacao. So if you've never seen cacao, this is what it looks like. And that's my wife, Ellen, on the right. Our host is this fellow in the front who had cut the cacao open for us to taste. It's really not sweet at all. It's kind of a strange taste. So if you've ever have a chance to taste cacao, tell me what you think. So that's Tony, our guide on the left, and he knew every sound. He knew every bird. It was amazing to be with him. For lunch, we would always go to a place that had an overlook or bird feeding stations. This place was called Mirador Rio Blanco. We're looking down at the Rio Blanco River. And from here, we could see kites, swallowtail kites, and all sorts of predatory birds flying around. And if you're really brave, you could go out on this platform. I don't know if I would have done this, but somehow they managed to tiptoe across. On day 4, we also went to the Balcon Tumpiki, another private reserve with the nectar feeders and the ripe bananas out, and proudly showing all the different types of birds that you're apt to see there. On the way to our next stop, we had to go through this pass, and I don't know how good your translation from metrics to feet is, but 4,063 meters is 13,330 feet. And this refuge that's owned by the Paz family, Refugio Paz de las Aves, of the birds, is a place that you go to find the cock of the rock and several different types of ant pittas, and that's what's shown on their sign. And it's 13,000 feet up. You're in a cloud forest. It may be raining, it may not be raining. As Lee here has her jacket and our raincoats nearby in case it starts raining, we're still going to go birding. Beautiful view, lots of birds out there. And this is how they attract the ant pittas. They take worms, cut them up, and they've trained these ant pittas to come to the same place every day at about the same time. And they actually call them in. So you'll hear the fellow calling, Katie, 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 or whatever the bird's name is. And after a while, sure enough, the ant pitta, which is a little short bird, sort of, I'll show you pictures later, and it'll come up and it'll get very shy, grab the worms, and disappear. We went to many places for lunches that had overlooks and the feeders. And if you look at these pictures on the wall, these were all taken by guides from Ecuador. And very bottom left side is a picture that was taken by our guide. So he's sort of famous there. And had a little fun with some wings. Our second lodge was San Isidro Lodge. All the lodges that Holbrook put you up in are very nice. All of them had pool. Every hotel had a pool. The food was excellent. You can really trust Holbrook and Wildside to do a great job. And this pool was heated, so it was like getting into a hot tub. It was great at the end of a long day. And of course, there are beautiful views from the lodge down to the lake. One day when it's sort of rainy, in between breaks in the rain, we went to a river. When you go to rivers to try to find torrent ducks, dippers, and torrent tyrannulates. And here in Costanga, we had luck finding all them plus more. I'll show you pictures later. This was a statue by the river. You can see that they really take pride in their birds. The next day, driving to our next destination, we passed this volcano. There's 47 volcanoes in Ecuador, and a lot of them are still active. Now, we were going to go to a different place up in the mountains, but when we saw the weather forecast, our guide Tony decided we'll go down the other side, go to the east side, and go to the Amazon Basin. So we went from way high up, 10,000 feet, down to 2,000, 3,000 feet. And this is where the bus dropped us off. And it didn't look too promising because it was a cleared off field. You know, there's a lot of slash and burn still goes on in South America. But as soon as we got a little bit on the walk, it started looking more like this. And they told us at the hotel to get boots. And everyone was very thankful we did get boots because it was all mud and muck, going up hills and down hills, through creeks. But we saw an amazing array of birds there. One thing they had rigged up was this bird blind made out of just palm fronds. And again, we're waiting for ant pittas. With the ant pittas, sometimes they show up right away. Sometimes it takes them a while. Sometimes they don't show up at all. The next day, we were going to be heading back to Quito to get to the Antisana. You have to, because there's mountains, the roads, there's very few roads around. So you have to go back to Quito to get to anywhere. And the road was closed off because a truck carrying palm oil had overturned. And so the road was closed. So we had to kind of kill a whole nother day in that area. And we went to a lodge that our guide knew about called the Rio Quios Eco Lodge. And it had a beautiful river. Here's this is an endless parade of trucks waiting to get through the pass. And we couldn't figure out whether it was going to get cleared up right away or not. It turned out that it did not get cleared up until that night. So we had to scramble around and stay at the same lodge that we had been at the night before. But when we're at the Rio Quios Eco Lodge, it's at the Rio Quios, and we saw amazing birds here, a lot of warblers over on the other side of the river. So finally, they cleared off the palm oil spill, and we were able to get back through Quito and on our way to Antisana. And Antisana is way high elevation, and you can see there aren't very many trees growing there. And there are snow-capped volcanoes. This is the volcano Antisana, and it's 18,900 feet. And the reason that we went to this place is because they have birds there that don't exist anywhere else in Ecuador. And one of the main birds that you see there is the condor. So this is what it looked like birding there. There was a bunch of abandoned buildings. And I'll let you know in a little while whether we saw the condor. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the different plants, because as a horticulturist, I was just as excited about the plants, all the different flowers that were there. We really didn't see very many reptiles, I guess because it's too cold. But there were plants galore, everything from ginger lilies to orchids to gesneriids, fuchsias, calceolarias, lots and lots of different orchids everywhere. So it was really a treat to not only photograph the birds, but also take pictures of the flowers. And there were a lot of mammals. it wasn't unusual under the bird feeders to see agoutis. So I found out that there's two different kinds of agoutis. There's the brown one and then there's the black one. Of course, rabbits were everywhere. On the Antisana, we saw wild horses. Red squirrels, of course, like to raid the feeders. This is a banana feeder made out of bamboo. In the Antisana, we saw herds of deer. We also saw alpacas, and we even were lucky enough to see an Andean fox up there in the Antisana. So now I'm going to get into the birds, and I'm going to go pretty quick. When you go on an expedition like this, think about that there's 1,640 different bird species in Ecuador, and that's not even including the Galapagos. That's just the mainland. Mead Garden, which is our exciting spot here in Orlando, might have 200 different birds a year. In the 7 days that we actually went birding, we saw over 300 species. And this slide presentation has most of them. So we may be here for a while. No, I'm kidding about that. But hummingbirds are really crazy. There's 132 species of hummingbirds in Ecuador. And on our list of possible hummingbirds that we could have seen in the different areas around Quito, we could have seen 88. Well, we saw 44, which was pretty good. So here's some of the amazing, colorful birds of Ecuador. I'm going to go real fast. So we have the red-headed Barbet male, and the female is not red-headed at all. And then we were able to see the toucan barbet, which has got a beak somewhat like a toucan, I guess, is how it got its name. The trogon, masked trogon, is the one that's predominant there. That's the female, and here's the male. Just got a hold of a moth and is eating it. Andean guan is a rather large bird. Beautiful red feet. And the rufous motmot is the motmot that you commonly see there. Here it is eating some sort of fruit. And if you look at the tail, that's sort of diagnostic for the motmots. The strangest bird I saw, which looks to me like a harbor seal, is the great patoo, which is perfectly blended into the gray trunk that it was sitting on top of. We did get to see the cock of the rock several times. A meeting place for where the cocks of the rock come to do their mating ritual is called a lek. So we were taken to several leks and saw the cock of the rocks come in to do their little dances and all. Golden-headed quetzal. Many different kinds of parakeet, maroon-tailed, many parrots, bronze-winged. This one looks a little worse for wear. Rose-faced parrots were very cute. And then, of course, toucans and toucanettes. We had crimson rump toucanet, collared aracari, yellow-throated toucan, plate-billed mountain toucan, the russet backdoor pendula makes the hanging nests, which we saw lots of, and seemed to hang out a lot together with the scarlet rump cacique. They have sparrows there. They're a little more colorful generally. We have black striped sparrow we saw, the orange-billed sparrow, and one that's everywhere all over the country is the rufous colored sparrow and many other parts of South America and Central America. Still prettier than most of our sparrows. Able to see a pipit there called a paramo pipit. That was in the Antisana. And other ones from the Antisana we saw, this Thumbaeus sierra finch. There's the male. The female looks completely different. We saw red-crested cotinga there. Lots of chestnut-winged synclodes in the Antisana, as well as the stout-billed synclodes. There were several different thrushes. I've tried to group the birds together by category. So we had the great thrush. The most common thrush that we saw was the Ecuadorian thrush. And we got to see common visitor to Florida, the Swainson's thrush. Their blackbird is called a scrub blackbird. And a bird that I saw in Hawaii, we saw here, is the saffron finch, which is really one of the prettiest birds. But yellow-breasted brush finch is very attractive. Chestnut cap brush finch. They have a lot of saltators. This is the buff-throated saltator. And black-eared hemisphingus. Yellow-throated chlorosphingus. Dusky chlorosphingus. It seemed like every place we went would have different hummingbirds or different tanagers or different forest birds, different little birds. Slate-throated redstart. Didn't see that many warblers. We did see the three-striped warbler. And then we saw some warblers that migrate through here. Canada warbler and the Blackburnian warbler eating a moth. And the tropical parula. Then there's some other unique birds, the black-billed peppershrike, golden-collared honeycreeper, golden-collared honeycreeper female. I like the green in the wings. Banana quits are most everywhere. They come to the fruit, and I guess they like nectar as well. The black grass quit, female. And surprisingly, we saw green jays there, which I've seen in southern Texas, and they're very raucous and noisy and fun. They have a bunch of different doves that we don't have, like the white-throated quail dove. And this one in particular I thought was very pretty, the white-tipped dove. And then euphonias are very common visitors to the banana feeders. And there's several different varieties. This is the thick-billed euphonia, bronze green euphonia, orange-bellied euphonia. And then there's the different flower piercers, which you can see that little hook on the end of their bill, which helps them get the nectar from the base of the flowers. So we had the glossy flower piercer in one place. In another location, we had the masked flower piercer. And then still another location on the Antisana, we had the black flower piercer. Yellow-bellied seed eater, variable seed eater, obviously like seeds, chestnut-bellied seed eater. And this is kind of what you see at a lot of the lodges and restaurants, where they'll have a log, it could be a piece of bamboo or a hollowed out log where they stick the bananas or other ripe fruit. And the birds just take turns coming to the feeder. And sometimes you get lucky and you'll have, what do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 species of birds here all at the same time. And the rest are in nearby trees just waiting for their turn. So now we're going to get into the tanagers, which is a major category in South and Central America. Here, of course, we only have a few, but look at all the variety that we have here and look at all these colors. Flame-faced tanager, blue-capped tanager. You can see a lot of these pictures were taken in the rain. One of my favorites was the bay-headed tanager, really pretty bird. Kind of reminds me a little bit of our painted bunting. And then white-lined tanager, the male, female, completely different. Black-chested mountain tanagers. They had many different kinds of mountain tanagers that just had slight variations of color. Scarlet-bellied mountain tanager, blue-necked tanager, golden tanager. A lot of these, the names are very descriptive of the birds, and some you wonder, how did they get that name? But look at this, glistening green tanager. This was definitely one of my favorite tanagers. Black-capped tanager, the male. Here's the female, looks very different. Flame rump tanager male, the female, very different. Black chin mountain tanager, dusky face mountain tanager, or dusky face tanager, blue-winged mountain tanager, saffron crown tanager, didn't get a great picture of that one. Golden nape tanager, ochre ochre-breasted tanager, moss-back tanager, beautiful colors, rufous-throated tanager, the male, palm tanager, we see that one a lot, but this one just blows me away. Blue barrel-spangled tanager, look at that. Silver-throated tanager reminds me a little bit of the golden tanager. And we were lucky enough to see one of our migrants that should be here for long, maybe a few already here, summer tanager. And there's wrens, although the wrens are tricky to get pictures of. It's able to get the grass wren and a house wren. Believe it or not, there's a lot of house wrens down there. And now we're coming to the hummingbirds. You can tell from this picture that there's an amazing variety of hummingbirds. I mean, here we feel lucky if we see one ruby-throated hummingbird, and maybe we'll get some other vagrant that got blown off course and wound up in Florida. But there are little tiny hummingbirds, there's giant hummingbirds, 132 species, which we saw 44. They have star frontlets like the buff-winged star frontlet. Great sapphire wing, very appropriate name. Sapphire banded puff leg, the puff leg, you see a little white down there by its ankles. One of my favorite hummingbirds was the shining sunbeam, and these pictures don't even really do it justice. It really was spectacular colors. Fawn-breasted brilliant, black-throated mango, interesting color combination there. The hermits are the ones with the longer curved beaks. There are several kinds that we saw there, including the white whiskered, the bronzy hermit. I think later on there's going to be a brown hermit. Green thorntail is a little tiny bird. And this one is really pretty. Look at that, chestnut-breasted coronet. Purple-chested hummingbird. Too bad I didn't get a picture of the chest. And then there's several hummingbirds that have long, very long beaks, like the sword-billed hummingbird. And I didn't get a good picture, but in the Antisana, we saw a giant hummingbird, which is a really big bird with a long beak. Andean emerald, green crown brilliant, violet-tailed sylph, long-tailed sylph, purple-bibbed white-tip. That's a pretty obvious name, isn't it? White-necked Jacobin, female. Rufous-tailed hummingbird was one of the most common hummingbirds we saw, very identifiable. The rufous tail and the curved orange beak. And then these little birds, the wood stars, are hardly bigger than a bee. The gorgeted wood star, violet-fronted brilliant, green-fronted lancebill. Here's the brown Inca, sort of purplish blue wings. Buff-tailed cornet, velvet purple cornet, long-billed starthroat, another good appropriate name. Looks like a stars on the throat. Empress brilliant, sparkling violet ear. I have to blow that up and print it. And then really cute birds. Again, they have little white boots. This is the white-booted racket tail. And you may say, well, it doesn't look like it has a racket tail. This is the female. She doesn't get the racket tail. But the male has the racket tail. And look how small it is. That's on somebody's hand. So here's another wood star, very small bird. Speckled hummingbird. You can see its chest is speckly. And here's the Peruvian racket-tail, and you can see how it got its name. The tail divides in two, and it looks like it has little paddles on the end. It has boots too, but they're not white. They're sort of tannish. And then there's a whole bunch of woodpeckers, really interesting woodpeckers. Here's lineated woodpecker, golden olive woodpecker, and I was able to get good pictures of these because they were coming to the feeder and eating bananas too. This one didn't come to the feeder. Smoky brown woodpecker, black-cheeked, crimson mantled. That's a beautiful one there. Olive-backed woodpecker, that combination of the yellows and the browns and the reds. And then, yeah, we have cuckoos in America, but we don't have anything like this, squirrel cuckoo. I've seen that in several countries in my trips. Really handsome bird. There's a lot of birds that habitat the forest, either on the floor or going through the leaf litter or on the trunks of the trees looking for bugs. Zeledon's antbird is one you more hear than see. I was able to catch a picture of it. And then there's a bunch of birds called tree creeper, tree hunter. And a lot of these birds were coming to get the moths off of those sheets that were lit up. So here's streak-capped tree hunter, lineated foliage gleaner, montane wood creeper. Just think how excited we are here in Florida when we get a wood creeper. Plain brown wood creeper, spotted wood creeper, strong-billed wood creeper. This is all in the same area. Spotted barbtail. And here are the different ant pittas that came to get the worms. So our patience paid off. In one place, there were 4 different ant pittas we could have seen, and we heard one and saw 2. So here's the ochre-breasted ant pitta, white-bellied ant pitta eating different worms. You can see they have hardly any tail to them. Yellow-breasted ant pitta. I don't think they fly much. They sort of just hop around. Chestnut-crowned ant pitta, tawny ant pitta, eating another bug. And then here's a few odd things. Believe it or not, in the Antisana, 13,000 feet up, they have a gull called the Andean gull. I don't know why it's there. There are lakes up there, but it's just hunting around. I don't know. Then we saw a meadowlark in some fields. It's called the red-breasted meadowlark, very different from our meadowlark. And a smooth-billed Annie in the rain. Down by the river, we were able to see the torrent duck. These ducks just dive in the water. The water is very rough, and they just dive in, grab whatever they're going to eat, and jump back up on the rocks. We saw spotted sandpipers on the rocks as well. Indian lapwing was by the river. And at the lodge, San Isidro Lodge, they have black-banded owls, which are also called San Isidro owls. And they would come every night, and we could flash our lights and see them. That was pretty much the only owl that we saw the whole trip. Talked about the swallow-tailed kites. Since we were up on a viewing area looking down, usually when you see a kite, you're looking at it from the bottom and it's white, mostly white. And from on top, you can see the colors, the blue-gray and the black and white head. So now we're going to get into some of the raptors. And of course, for me, the raptors are the hardest to photograph because they're usually moving and they're usually far away. But we had variable hawk. In the Antisana, we had many, many carunculated caracaras, dozens. They weren't rare at all. They were all over the place in the Antisana. We saw double-toothed hawk, black and white hawk eagle, hawk-billed kite, not a great picture, but broad-winged hawks, short-tailed hawks, roadside hawks, and we did get to see many Andean condors when we're in the Antisana area. So if you're near Quito, you definitely need to go to the Antisana and you get to see these condors, which have giant wingspans. Now this was also seen down by the river. I put it in this part of the program because a torrent tyrannulet is a flycatcher, and it was down by the river too. We did see vermilion flycatchers, but then we saw a lot of other flycatchers that you probably will not see in Florida, like the pale edge flycatcher, smoke-colored pewee, dusky capped flycatcher, black phoebe, often found near the water as well. Cinnamon flycatcher was one of my favorite birds. Very small little flycatcher. In the Antisana, we had the black plain-capped ground tyrant. We had golden-bellied flycatchers. Another really cute flycatcher was the ornate flycatcher, really pretty yellow puffball of a bird. Tropical kingbird, of course, we do get here, Florida, and the marble-faced bristle tyrant. And so on the last night of your trip, you have a farewell dinner, and we were back at our hotel in Quito for that night, bidding everyone farewell till the next year. And I do want to announce that I'm trying to organize a trip with Holbrook for February 3rd through the 13th of 2026. So if anyone's interested, you can get in touch with me, or it'll probably be publicized on our website. So now I'm happy to take any questions.
Great job.
Yeah, great bird pictures. Well, Cindy had said she wanted to know, are the birds more colorful because they're below the equator?
I don't think that's it. First, I probably should have said this earlier. I love birding and bird watching. I know how to bird watch. I may not know every bird. I didn't know most of the birds when I headed to Ecuador. And this is something else I want everyone to understand. You don't have to know the birds of Ecuador to go to Ecuador. You don't have to know the birds of Cuba to go to Cuba. You will learn as you go, because every day your guide will tell you what you're seeing, and you'll make a mistake and say, oh, is that a whatever? And you may be wrong, and he'll correct you. And little by little, you'll start to learn the birds. Also, if you take their pictures, then you use your Merlin app and you try to figure out what you saw during the day. But at the end of every day, you have a dinner with your group. And during the cocktail hour, you go over what you've seen during the day in a book like this. Can you see what I'm holding up? Maybe not.
It keeps disappearing.
Well, anyway, it's a species guide for the area that you're going to. In Holbrook, and I assume Wildside do the same thing. They prepare it ahead of time, and it has every day 1 through 9, and a list of the birds you're apt to see. And each night you start with day 1 and you say, okay, we saw an Andean guan, and you check it off. We saw a wattled guan, you check it off. We saw a dark-backed woodquill, and you check it off. And each day you do that. And so by the end of the trip, see, this is what's wrong with blurring your background. By the end of the trip, you have a summary of all the birds that you've seen. And of course, hopefully you've brought your camera and you've taken a lot of pictures. But the group, our group, was all on an app together, and we could share pictures, both of us swimming or hanging around, and the bird pictures, or the pictures of a mammal or whatever we saw. So you don't have to be an expert to go birding. In fact, it's kind of fun to not know what you're going to see, whether you're going to see a sloth or a poisonous snake or a bug like a rhinoceros beetle. You just go with the flow. You'll pick stuff up. Now, if you want to study ahead of time, you can get a book on the birds of Ecuador and you can go through it. One very important thing is that you need to download on Merlin and eBird the bird lists for that area. What do you call them? Bird packs. So before you go to any country, download the bird packs and have it on your phone, because when you get there, you may not have great cell service and you may not be able to download bird packs. Some countries you go to, the Merlin sound ID doesn't work well. I was in Australia and it wouldn't pick up hardly anything. But apparently people have been to South America and Central America enough, and there's enough trained guides there that they have almost all the sounds down, So as I'm walking around, I might have the Merlin sound ID on, but if you're with a guide, the guide will tell you long before the Merlin even recognize it. They'll say, oh, that's a tapakulu or whatever. And then you try to find the bird. So it's really a pleasure to travel with a group like this. I know some people say, oh, I'm going down there, I'm going to hire a guide. But when you're with a group, it's so much more fun. It's fun if the people are all friends to begin with, but it's just as much fun if you don't even know each other and you go together and you get to know each other. And then it can lead to lasting friendships. Jackie Sulik's getting another trip up for later this fall to Colombia that I may sign up for. It is true that if you go to Colombia and you go to Ecuador and you go to Panama, eventually you'll see that some of these birds are the same. And I think some of the birds that I had in my pictures didn't show up for some reason. But you'll start to learn the birds. You'll start to learn the birds. At least you'll know that it's a seed eater or a fruit eater or something, and you'll know it's a hummingbird, and you'll figure out whether it's a tanager or a toucanet, and it's just fun. And these places are so amazing. It's so wonderful to be out in the wild. When you go on a tour like this, they try to take you to many different environments, down by a river, up on a mountain top, 13,000 feet high, at mid-level, because every one of those environments has a different group of birds. I grouped all the tanagers together. Maybe I should have done it separately, like at each stop, which tanagers we saw. But I knew that this would take a long time to show all the pictures, try to get you excited about birding in Ecuador. Panama probably has almost as many birds. So be thinking about February 3rd to the 13th. I made sure it's not the rainy season.
All right, David Simpson said thanks for the presentation. He can vouch for Holbrook. They led a trip with them in November and have also gone with them to Costa Rica and Guatemala. Next February, they're going with them to Guatemala. And he did have to sign off early, but he said thanks again. Lori said great shots. Thanks for sharing. Karen Castle said thank you. The sheet with the light was very interesting. I think I saw that in Costa Rica too, but it was for people studying moths. So I think it's interesting that they were using it to feed birds.
The birds love them. They love the moths.
Yeah, I think the moth collectors were just collecting the moths, so I don't think they were letting the birds eat them. But
Well, since we're with an entomologist, Lee Bloomkamp, she told us what all the moths were that she could identify. And besides taking the Merlin and Eber down, you definitely need to load on your phone iNaturalist. And I was identifying all the plants and the moths and stuff with iNaturalist very successfully.
Very good. Now, Sherry also said one theory suggests tropical birds are more colorful because they need to find and see each other in that busy environment, probably. So, very cool.
Yeah, I'm not an ornithologist. I'm just somebody that likes to go out and look at birds.
Jackie said, great job, a great walk down memory lane. Sherry Ann said, we've been on 6 Holbrook trips and every one except for one was superb. Bobby said, great trip. Sherry said, very impressive presentation with comprehensive overview and wonderful images. You are very well organized and a great, clear speaker. Very good. Nice. And
Well, I'm hoping that all of you will come on our next trips. What I tell people is I'm kind of bored with the birds of Florida. And some people get excited about finding a new sparrow. They're all brown and black and tan. Wouldn't you like to go out and see amazingly colorful birds and 44 hummingbirds and 50 tanagers and all kinds of predatory birds that we don't have in America? And Holbrook is very inexpensive. Plus, if you sign up for a Holbrook trip, for this Holbrook trip, they'll be making a donation to Orange Audubon. So that's another good reason to do it.
Yeah. Very good. Any more questions? Oh, Sherry said she can vouch for Wildside too. Alan and I were on the trip to Belize together.
I would say with Holbrook, you're going to stay in a little fancier lodge, but it's no more money. It's actually cheaper than Wildside. I don't know how they do it. And we've had amazing guides on every Wildside tour and every Holbrook tour.
Now, your guide found the great Putu, I can never say that, in the daytime. You saw it?
We saw it in the daytime.
Ah,
It was in the Amazon area, in the jungles there, and it was just up on top of what looked like a dead tree that was gray bark, and it perfectly blended in. But I think our guide knew it was there.
mhm.
Many of the places we went to, we had our guide, and in a few places, we had actually some people that lived in the area who were very familiar with the area. So on that particular trip, we did have two people that we picked up in this little town, and they went with us out into the jungle. And they were the ones trying to get the ant pittas to come.
Hmm.
Everywhere we went, somebody was luring in an ant pitta, successfully or unsuccessfully.
Very cool.
Yeah, don't be scared to take a trip. Take a leap and do it. Really, it's cheaper than a cruise.
Okay.
Yeah. I would rather do a trip than a cruise myself.
And we were probably never more than 60 miles from Quito, although it might take 2 hours to get somewhere because the roads are winding. You're going along mountains, and there weren't many tunnels. And everywhere you went, their super highways were like one lane, maybe not even a passing lane. I didn't look out the front window. You don't want to look out the front window and see what's going on.
Oh, Sherry also did point out if anyone is watching The Residence on Netflix, an ant pitta is in the show.
Yes, that is true.
I have not watched that one.
That was her nemesis bird in the show that she went down, I think, to Costa Rica to see in the show. Maybe Ecuador, maybe it was Ecuador. But there are many different kinds of, Ecuador. There's many different kinds of ant pitta. Every region has a slightly different one. The breast is yellow or it's white or it has a different color head. So you can come back and have 300 life birds every time you go abroad. If you have a guide. If you go by yourself, you might get 100 life birds. You really need to go with a guide.
Yeah, it is good to have a guide.
They can hear a little chip and know exactly what it is. And then you find it. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you so much, Alan.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
That was outstanding program.
We'll sign off and everybody see you again soon.
Yep. Come to the in-person meeting next week.
Yep. Oh, with live birds.
Live birds.